Hi, this is Dr. Les, and welcome back to I Bought a Farm. So now what? Pretty exciting day. It's April 23rd. Near the end of the day, we're running out of daylight. Tomorrow, we receive the heifers. I found a great set of heifers from Rock and P Livestock up in Maysville, Kentucky. We purchased 28 heifers that are Simmental Angus cross, and we were able to get those heifers in and delivered at a very reasonable price. So I'm excited. Dr. Lehmkuhler and I will be working tomorrow to get the first part of the forage system set up on the farm. And so the next several videos will be me at the farm, Dr. Lehmkuhler at the farm, setting up the forage system and receiving the heifers.
That's kind of the approach if you think about it from that standpoint on this farm. The area up here by the barn will be a great area with some reels and temporary fence if we needed to, but I think, did you say there was fence already in this area?
Yeah, that whole barn lot is fenced off. I mean, you can almost see that deeper green is fenced off. And it's really good polywire fence. I mean, it's good fence.
Yeah, so we've got good fence in this area. And what is the beauty about this? This is going to be our receiving area. We've got an opportunity to use this acreage to get cattle out on pasture, but yet keep them up close to the barn where we can put our temporary working facility in and keep an eye on these calves. And if we need to be able to get them up to treat them for respiratory disease or anything like that, they're going to be close for the first few days. And certainly less stress on a farmer that hasn't worked a lot of cattle and the cattle from moving them way back here in this back field all the way up to where the working facility might be. So we're going to do some additional footage, I think, on this and maybe a upcoming episode, or I can go out and get some other footage when we start putting these fence lines in. We'll look at the energizer or charger. We're going to use solar chargers. You've got three choices: a plug-in, a battery that uses kind of a deep marine 12-volt type battery for boats, or a combination that uses a solar charger panel to charge a battery that would energize the fence. And the plug-ins are going to give you more power for the cost. As you move from plug-ins to solar, the cost per unit of power that you get tends to get more expensive. But in this situation, we're going to use some solar fencers that we have on hand. And again, if the landowner decides that he doesn't want to pursue this any longer, everything will be able to be pulled up in probably a half a day. It's going to take us a half a day to lay it out and a half a day to pull it up. This is the mindset for folks too that they should think about on rented ground. If you've got a short-term lease, it does not make sense to invest a lot of money in fencing material if you're going to be kicked off in a year. If you've got a 10-year lease, then you can think about sinking some money into infrastructure. Dr. Anderson?
Sounds perfect. We're thinking about receiving the cattle maybe toward the end of this week or beginning of next week, and we'll just receive them up in the barn lot and leave them up there for probably a week, just to be honest about it. After that, I assume we're going to turn out on that northern section and let them graze through that, and then rotate them clockwise through, and then come back in about a month and be back on that northern section. Does that sound about right?
That sounds exactly right. So today we're using a couple different types of fence out here on the farm. This is all going to be electrified fence to subdivide and make our interior fencing for our paddocks. What we have here is what we would call a polywire, and if we look closely at this, you can see that there are multiple small strands
of metal wire that are braided in with a little larger diameter plastic or nylon braided wire. So these all get put together into a braid. The challenge with using this in long stretches is due to the small size. Electricity runs around the outside of the wire, and you have more resistance with a really small diameter wire. So think about a pipe. If you had a half-inch pipe, water pushing through that half-inch pipe, it's going to take more force to get the same amount of flow compared to a 4-inch pipe. So we also are using a bit larger gauge solid aluminum wire that will have less resistance, and it'll carry a little bit more voltage for a longer strand length. And so we've got some lengths on the farm here that are pretty good distance that we're using with the aluminum wire. It'll be our extension cord to be able to turn these polywire stretches that are shorter on and off when we build our paddocks. So again, when we make splices, what we typically would do is we're going to pull this together, and what we'll do is make a real simple knot. And so you take two ends together, make a small little simple knot, leave yourself about a ½ to an inch on the end here. You can always trim it back. Then we'll take a lighter, we'll melt the plastic off of here and just leave the bare wires, and then we can twist those bare wires together so we make sure we get good current through there.
We're going to be using two types of fence posts. First is this fiberglass fence post that Dr. Lehmkuhler is going to show in just a second. Dr. Lehmkuhler is going to step off about 30 steps from the corner post there with the post driver, and after every 30 steps he's going to push one of those fiberglass posts in the ground. Those fiberglass posts are very handy for use with our polywire and aluminum fence. With me and Dr. Lehmkuhler today are the landowner and his brother to help us put this fence system up. We're using aluminum wire along this stretch because aluminum wire has less resistance and carries more current than the polywire that we have. Here I come up with the second type of post that we're going to put in. These are your standard plastic polywire fence posts. I'm going to put those in about every 15 steps, or approximately halfway between each fiberglass post. There on the corner where you can see the fence post driver, it's on a T-post, and that T-post is at the corner of the pond, and we are walking down or putting in the line fence. Here you can see the end of this line. We put two D-clip plastic polywire fence posts close to the exterior fence. We tied the aluminum wire off on a plastic insulator stuck to a T-post. All right, just going to demonstrate how we use the fiberglass post for our Ford system. One of the keys is this clip. It's just a little cotter key, cotter pin looking thing. Okay, it's going to go, the wire is going to go through it like that. All right, you're going to find a position where it's going to be about high enough where it's going to catch the heifers at about their shoulders. Okay, so that when they're grazing and trying to stick their head underneath it, we want to catch the shoulders. All right, we're going to go through, and then we're going to bend one up like that. Okay, and this is kind of a corner, so we want to go on the inside here just in case they hit it. We don't want to pull the post over. We don't want to have any issues with this jamming up.
We put these tread-in posts in. We want to make sure that the D-rings are running perpendicular to the line. If we put those D-rings in parallel with the line will just pull right on out.
All right, paddock 2 is up here. This is the top of the hill. The tobacco patch is just over the rise. All right, so the cattle will come out of paddock 1 through that gate. They'll come into paddock 2. Their access to water will be through this lane. Okay, so they'll come through here We've got the polywire lane set up, so they'll come down to the common access point to the pond. Okay, we're down at the pond. Remember, we have the aluminum wire running on our longer stretches because of less resistance, and it can hold a better charge. The cattle will come out of paddock 2 down this lane. You can see some posts there. All right, it's a pretty big lane, but this is kind of what we had to do for this common access point. The access point to the pond will be right here. It's a little deeper here than over there, which is why we made this lane longer and one common access point. So what we'll do, and what we're getting ready to do right now, is we're going to tie up a fence handle, a charging handle right there. And so that when we're ready for the cattle to come, when the cattle are in paddock 2, the fence gate will be there and they'll have access. All right, and we still have to put 2 T-posts out in the water there to limit their access to the whole pond. And then when we move the cattle to paddock 3, which is there, we'll swing this gate over and hook it into that post. Okay, so it'll be a pretty simple process. This is the fence that separates paddock 3 from paddock 4. That's paddock 4 there as it heads out to the road. Just going to walk on up this lane so that you can see the extent of this polywire. All right, here we are at the top of the knoll. Okay, you can see the fence rolling on there. It goes all the way back to the fence line. I've got to set me a T-post there because we've got it tied off, but I don't have it insulated. I need to set a T-post there at where that big tree is. Okay, and then that polywire runs the length of this field. We just used the plastic posts here, and even though it's not, you know, for conductivity, it's not best to have the polywire here. We'd rather have aluminum. We've used the polywire to run this stretch. Again, that's paddock 4. This is paddock 3. Here's the gate I was talking about. You can see Dr. Jeff tying it off. It's going to swing from this corner right there where that T-post is, between that fiberglass post and the fiberglass post over there, to allow access from paddock 2 to water there, and paddock 3 to water again through that common area. So we'd hook there, move the gate to here, have a common access point for 2 different paddocks. Thanks for joining us on I Bought a Farm, So Now What?